All right, good morning, sports fans. We're out here on the beautiful Hudson. Figured we'd get ourselves a view today. Beautiful day up here in Poughkeepsie, mid-June, and looking to get us a recap today of the IRA, and then also a season recap and wind down for the Marist men's rowing team. Before I jump in on our recaps, I wanted to get a quick list of thank yous out to some of the people who help us out during the year. In particular, I think it's important to note that no team operates as a part of an athletics department in a vacuum. We have a lot of people who help us out throughout the year, and who help us administer to the team. So I wanted to mention some of them and the work that they do in the background to help this team function and succeed. We have our athletics director, Tim, Zach Harkenreiter, who's our sport administrator and also heads the athletics financial office, business office. So him and his helper Caroline help us with planning, logistics, finances, budgeting, all the expenses that the team has. We have in our compliance office Liz Donahue and KG. Those guys help make sure that we're following the rules and keep all of our paperwork in line, both for our current athletes and also for our recruits. We also have the Center for Student Athlete Enhancement, which is run by Alyssa Gates, and our immediate sports supervisor in that department, it was Nicholas Jackson, this year a recent Marist graduate from the football team. That office, they help us keep track of the athletes' grades. They help provide support and tutoring academically for any athletes who need additional support. And then they also have a whole raft of different, what's the word I'm looking for? Different opportunities in the community, between service opportunities to get involved in other community events, events here on campus. Basically an outreach office for student athletes here at Marist. And they do a great job of keeping us all engaged in our campus and community. And so thanks to them. And then we have a whole group of performance-related positions. Our trainer's office, our head trainer is Jeff. Our immediate trainer for the team is Denise, who is awesome. She's been really exceptional. We have a sports psychologist, Anthony, and then we also have been working with a nutritionist and a dietitian, Aaron and Sydney, who've helped us with our fueling. And then our lifting coach, Aaron Suma, who helps develop our lifting plan and runs that with us in the weight room. That was a massive improvement this year over last year, in part thanks to Coach Suma and also thanks to the student athletes who really committed to that plan in a much deeper way than in past years. So props to them for getting it done. And then I also wanted to thank our immediate coaching staff. On the women's side, we have Tom and Marguerite and Kate, who obviously don't coach the men directly, but they help us to administer to all the athletes down here at the boathouse, and have a good partnership between us and our women's team. And then also Josh, who's our assistant coach. Josh, I believe this is his 10th year working with Marist. He started around the same time that I did, and this is his 7th or 8th year working with the men's team. So huge thanks to Josh. He's become an important partner with me in the training process and the selection process and also the recruiting process. He's a very busy guy. He's involved in his own separate career, doing wealth management for people up here in the Hudson Valley, and also is very heavily involved in the rowing community at all levels. So thanks, Josh, for everything that you put into this program. It means a lot. And then finally, I wanted to mention 3 of our alumni who put in some time as volunteers this year, helping out with the team. Those of you who have been around and aware of the team the last 4 or 5 years, we've had a fairly steady stream of alumni who have come through and helped out as volunteers with the team, either as recent grads or people who are stopping by in town. And all of them have been incredibly helpful to the team and have helped provide support and additional coaching. This year we had Liam Clem, who was just this last year's class of 2025. Liam was completing his master's degree at Marist, and so he helped us out this past fall with our novice crew and coached with us through the fall season. This spring, he wasn't able to help with the formal training of the crew because he was doing his student teaching over at the Arlington School District. But he did stay involved in rowing and was helping out coaching the varsity girls for the Wappingers High School. So thanks to Liam. I know he's very enthusiastic about the sport and is planning on staying involved in rowing. And so we're looking forward to his continued coaching and rowing career. And we're hoping that he'll be able to find a job up here in the Hudson Valley and stay connected with our team as well. We also had Oxel and Durek Durwood. Oxel graduated, I believe, in 2023, and he was doing a little bit of guest coaching last year, and this year he wasn't around as much, but he did come down and help us out with our winter camp down at, sorry, I'm blanking out. He came down to our winter camp in DeLand in Florida. So huge thanks to Oxel for your help. And then finally, Brendan Mulview's class of 09. Brendan works for the head of the Charles and recently moved back to the Hudson Valley area. And he asked us if he could come down and give us some help in the mornings. And Brendan has been hugely helpful to the team. Big thanks to him. Extremely knowledgeable and experienced oarsman at a whole bunch of different levels, and has done some collegiate coaching already at MIT and as the head coach at BC in Boston. And so his input was exceptional, and the athletes really loved having him around, and we're hoping to convince him to keep coming down and putting in some time with us in the coming year, where it fits around his duties for HOCR. So thank you, Brendan, and thank you to all 3 of these guys. It's very telling and cool part of our program, and it means a lot to the athletes to see our alumni caring so much about the team and the outcomes that the team is achieving. To have these alumni coming back and putting in time. And so thank you guys for sharing your passion for the sport with us. All right, without further ado, I'm going to jump in and get a recap of the IRA here and then a recap of the season. So we had, right after the Dad Vale, we had a group of 8 oarsmen who stuck around, most of them from our varsity 8, to complete our seat racing for the IRA 4. notable in there were Ian Sondoff and James Hodge Andreas, and also Matthias Topping, all from the 2V, who helped us out during that week, which was finals week, with getting in some additional rows with that group and filling in gaps where we were missing people because of finals, and generally helping out get this IRA crew off the ground during finals week, which is not easy. Out of that week, we did some seat racing, and we selected Will Shockley and Charlie Latimer on port side, and Nicholas Scarano and Ryan Tuttle on starboard side for the boat. And then we had our two spares were Reed Livingston on starboard side and Kevin Murray on port side. All of those guys stuck around for the training program. Reed and Kevin were mostly in a pair and did some great work with Coach Mulvey during that time period. And then the four we took down early in the second week of the training period. We took them down to Lake Meahog in Cortland Manor. Shout out to the Cortland Manor Rowing Club for letting us sneak out and use their excellent pond down there. It's about 1,000 meters, very protected, perfect water. And we ran a series of time trials on there with the goal of just seeing what the fastest lineup was going to be for us. And so that's how we selected our lineup for the IRA, was just our fastest trial out of that group. We ended up with Will in the stroke seat and Charlie in the bow, which was just like last year's crew. And then our two starboards were in a bucket in the middle of the boat. And so that was the crew that we rolled out to the IRA with. After we selected the crew, we did a whole bunch of different training days. We tried to get in 2-a-days where we could. I would say the most unique part of this year's Forest Camp was it did not get hot really at any point. It stayed pretty cool, and then we also had a bunch of rain. And between those two things, it meant that we ended up with a lot less wind on the Hudson than we usually do. And so in past years where we've had to keep sneaking off to either Cortland Manor or up to Kingston to row at the Rondout Rowing Club, we were able to stay down here for most of our training period and do most of our rows right here at home. So that was nice. It also kept the water flat. And it also kept a lot of the pleasure boaters off the river, which was huge, especially around Memorial Day weekend. It poured rain pretty much all 3 days on Memorial Day weekend, and so that really helped to keep down the boat traffic to a relative minimum, which was nice. We traveled out to California on Wednesday before the event. We were able to arrange our flights where we rode here in the morning that day, and then we were able to travel mostly during daylight hours. We flew out of Albany around noon, and we landed in Sacramento around 7 or 8 o'clock local time out there. And so that really enabled us to keep the athletes' sleep schedules as close to normal as possible. And I think that was useful and helpful to us in the long run. The second day, Thursday, we rigged our boat out there, and then we were able to get in 2 practice rows on the course at Lake Natoma. Again, a little bit of a weird year out there. I've rarely been to Lake Natoma where it wasn't perfectly cloudless and extremely hot. And for whatever reason this year, the days were more partly cloudy and kind of medium temps, like in the 70s, and so that was really pleasant. Perfect water. I've never been to Lake Natoma and not had it be perfect. The forecast said it was a headwind. It was a tiny breath of a headwind all 3 days that we were racing there. And so we got in 2 practice rows that day. We rode in the morning. We did a little bit of a longer row with some faster pieces, and then on our second row we just did 1 lap, little swing row on the race course, keeping everybody's legs loose. And then the following day, on Friday, we jumped right into the race. For this fours race, it's a pretty interesting mix of schools and boats. There were 9 teams who, like Marist, represented collegiate teams, Division I collegiate teams that only had their top 4 athletes at the IRA. So there were 9 of us in that category, and then there were another maybe 13 programs that came from the top tier teams who were also competing in the 8s, and therefore were 4 guys out of their 4th varsity 8. So there were probably 12 to 13 programs like that, and then there were another 3 or 4 maybe who were representing Division III programs who had their 8s entered in the 8s category. And so overall it was an interesting mix of crews. As a result of this weird mix, you can't really run heats because you don't know how fast everybody is until you get to the event, and you don't really know what anyone's packing. And that also adds to the intrigue and the mystery from the coach's standpoint and the athlete's standpoint. You really don't know how to manage the event in any kind of strategic way, at least at the outset, because you really don't know how fast you're going to be in comparison to the other teams that are in attendance. So we raced our time trial. Time trial enables everybody to get on the board, get a time up, and see where they're going to stack up. The time trial at this event seeds all the crews into the 3 different semifinals for the ABC semis. And then the ABC semis are the top 2 go to the grand final, next 2 go to the second final, and the bottom 2 go to the third final. And so Marist in the time trial placed second, which was outstanding. We pulled a time of 6:12. We only lost to Cal. Cal went 6:05. They were absolutely cooking. And so that seeded Marist into a really great position. We were excited after the time trial. The athletes came off the water feeling like they had executed the piece how they wanted, but they felt like they had more to give. And I forgot to mention our 5th athlete in there, our coxswain, Tessa Kurzman, was in there driving for us her senior year here. So the semifinal was in the afternoon for that race. We had Washington, Marist, Northeastern, Jacksonville, FIT, and St. Joe's in that final. So great final, great mix of schools. We knew that Washington was going to be pretty fast. They had only been like a second, maybe a little over a second off of our time in the time trial. And we also figured that Northeastern was going to be pretty competitive, just based on who they are as a program. And then the other 3, Jacksonville, FIT, and St. Joe's, have all been very competitive during the year. St. Joe's in particular, we had incredibly close racing with during the regular season. We beat them in our duel with them earlier in the year by less than a second. And then FIT and Jacksonville, again, similar programs with their top 4 guys at this race. So the crew came into that race feeling very good, but also, kind of viewing all of those programs as a threat. The way that race unfolded, the two crews that came out really hot out of the gate were Washington and FIT. FIT was all the way out in lane 6, and they just absolutely sent it off the line. They just drilled their sprint to get ahead right away. And so them and Washington stayed up on the rest of the field for probably the first 1,000 meters. And the story of that race really was that Marist kind of latched on to Washington. I don't think we were ever down by more than deck to deck on Washington with our two decks overlapping. And the Marist guys couldn't see Washington, but they were close enough that they could hear them behind them, and they could sense that boat there. And they were also close enough that they weren't getting waked out by Washington. Washington was in the lane right next to us, and Marist was in lane 1. And so Marist was able to really latch on to that crew from Washington and just kind of hung with them through the whole first 1,500 meters of the piece. And that momentum really carried them through the race. There wasn't really any particular moment in that race where there was like a big, huge move or a heroic sprint. I think Marist took power 10s here and there, but mostly it was a story of just kind of continuously grinding through the other boats and teams that were there. And Marist and Washington just kind of continued to hang with each other through that whole first part of the piece. Coming into the last 500, Marist started to wind our sprint up and really started to push Washington more. And at a point, it looked like Marist was starting to come up to challenge Washington, or was at least putting a whole bunch of pressure on Washington. And actually, you could hear the guys in the Washington boat start to yell at one another to make some moves and communicate with each other as we came down that last stretch. We won't know what would have or could have happened. Marist ran into a flock of geese that was in their lane with about 350 meters to go. And so that was enough to kind of scramble our boat a little bit. The geese hit both of our oars and also the boat. And so we had probably 3 or 4 kind of scrambled off strokes before we were able to get back, fully locked in and matching again. And I think that allowed UW to reverse the momentum that Marist had and hang through the last part of the course. So we finished that race. We pulled a time of 6:34. We were 2 seconds behind UW's boat. And solidly in second place. And so that was a phenomenal result that qualified us to go to the grand final the following day. And that in and of itself was a huge result for Marist. That was definitely our reach goal coming into the regatta, was to try to shoot our shot to make that final. We felt like based on last year's result that we had found some speed this year, that we were faster. Last year we had won the third final, and so we felt confident this crew could go faster. But again, this is a deep pool of teams, and a lot of talented athletes in there. The Washington boat we were racing, for instance, in that race I was discussing, they had 2 athletes in that boat who have already won medals at a U23 Worlds event for their national teams. And so not insignificant speed in some of these other crews. So that was a phenomenal result. The grand final was scheduled for the following day, for Saturday. And we woke up on Saturday and learned that our coxswain, Tessa, had been feeling pretty ill most of the night and was getting worse. And we tried to get Tessa over to an urgent care. We tried to get her some medical help at the race course from the medical staff there on site. And she was just really sick. She had some kind of either a food poisoning or a little 24-hour stomach bug. But she was really sick and, shaking like a leaf and, shivering and sweating at the same time. And she was a hot mess and really was not functional enough to go out on the water. And so we were in a little bit of a conundrum. We could not race with her in the boat. Would not have been safe for her. And so we ended up sending Tessa off to the emergency room. We went through a whole series of issues with the IRA trying to get on the water, which I'll discuss in a moment. We ended up not being able to race that race, was kind of the conclusion of all of those events. And so that was a huge bummer for the crew. Obviously a lot of work went into getting out to California for this campaign. And so not being able to race the final was, didn't feel good. But I think that the athletes, that we did a phenomenal job at this regatta just to make that final, and there's a lot to be proud of in the way that we performed. And to the athletes' credit, they dealt with the situation very well. There was a lot of drama. We didn't know that we weren't going to be racing right up until they were in the midst of their warm-up and had to be pulled out of their warm-up and told, hey, this isn't going to happen. And all four of these guys were upset, but they dealt with the situation extremely professionally, and they stayed together. There were a lot of hugs and a lot of high fives, and I think that it was dealt with in the best possible way that we could have given the circumstances. I want to give a quick shout out to Tessa's family, who were out there in California with us. It was huge having them out there to help out with Tessa. She was able to run over to the emergency room with them, which enabled Josh and I to stay with the crew. Tessa was able to get a couple of IVs of fluid into her, and by the end of that day, wasn't feeling 100%, but was at least back on her feet and functional again. I don't think we'll ever really know exactly what happened. I think she just got sick. She got some sort of a 24-hour virus or bug or some sort of food poisoning or something. I'm going to talk briefly about how we dealt with it with the IRA, just so that people kind of know that there's a lot of rumors circling around online and in the parking lot at the event. And so Josh and I's goal was we wanted to try to get our athletes to row their race. The IRA lead referees, they seemed, the letter of the law in their rules is that you have to use a spare. If you're going to do a medical lineup change, you have to use a spare that comes from your own team. And we had 2 spare oarsmen with us, but we did not have a spare coxswain. There are some people that were saying, well, why didn't you have a spare coxswain? Well, it's extremely unlikely in this sport that your coxswain, who isn't doing any physical work, is going to get hurt, injured, or sick so badly that they aren't able to row. this was certainly the first time it's ever happened to me as a coach. I've never seen it happen as a spectator either of another team. It would not have made logical sense to bring 3 spare athletes all the way to California and spend thousands and thousands of dollars to have a coxswain who was just sitting around that whole training period. If you could have predicted that this would have happened, it would have made sense to fly a spare coxswain out with us. But that's all coulda, woulda, shoulda. There's no way we could have known that would happen. There were 9 other teams, like I said, out there with the same format as us. Not one of them had brought a spare coxswain with them. Many of the teams who were out there with their complete roster did not have a spare coxswain with them. So, that's not really a reasonable assumption. The lead referees recommended that we put in one of our spare oarsmen as the coxswain. That is what the rules permit. Frankly speaking, I kind of think that was a joke. Both of our options were well over 6 feet, both of them in the 200-pound range. Neither one of them has ever coxed before. That represents a fairness and safety issue, not only to our boat, but to the other boats who are in our race. Maybe if we're at a head race in the fall and we're just, out there to get a row and, nobody cares, it is what it is, maybe, you do that in that situation. But at a national championship regatta for the grand final, your boat's in between 2 other boats in lane 5. I did not think that was a reasonable option. And the other coaches, I think, would agree with me that was not realistic to expect one of our guys to jump in and to have our crew have any kind of a realistic, opportunity to compete. Josh and I felt like the logical solution was to invite a guest coxswain from another team to join us for our race. I should preface that by saying there were a whole slew of teams and coaches who offered us one of their coxswains to race with us, who also believed that this was clearly the most logical option. This would have meant putting in a coxswain who, while they didn't know our crew or our race plan, knew how to drive a 4, and we were in a parking lot filled with 100 talented and knowledgeable coxswains who all know how to do that. And so, again, shout out to all the coaches who jumped in and offered that to us as an option. Unfortunately, the lead referees of the event would not allow us to do that. We felt like this was the safer, more logical option to allow our crew to be able to compete. They seemed to believe that this represented a major risk. What if our crew ran into another crew? Josh and I suggested that if we ran with a guest coxswain, that our boat would be considered an exhibition entry and not count for medals. We suggested that maybe they switch us to lane 6, so we would be in an outside lane and less likely to interfere with another boat. We even suggested that we row in lane 7 and leave 6 empty, so that there would be a lane between us and the other crews to ensure that our crew could not, interfere with another crew who was racing for a medal. And all of those options were denied by the referee staff. Their ruling was strictly by the book. and according to the rules. I cannot fault them for that. We did not protest their decision. I appreciate that they have to make these decisions for the best possible outcome for the event, and that Josh and I are obviously biased towards our own athletes and and our own crew. With that said, I did not agree with their decision, and I know a lot of other people who don't. I believed that it was illogical to expect or allow a random oarsman from our team to be able to jump in and race, and it was logical to invite an experienced coxswain to come in and do the job that they have trained and practiced to do. And so the fact that one of those things was allowed and the other one was denied does not make a lot of sense to me as a coach. I understand that may follow the exact rule book, but it does not make any kind of logical sense to me. And I do believe that had we done that our crew would have been able to compete in their final, and would not have been a hindrance to another crew. But again, this is the way the world is. We go into these big events, and as I said in my recent post about the Dad Veil, whenever you go to a big regatta, you sacrifice some of your flexibility as a team and as a coach to the bigger rules that these referees are going to follow, and this was one of those cases. And so the only other thing that I will add is that it was clear over the course of the event that there were other events that took place at the regatta where the referees made other calls that were outside the rule book to flexibly make sure that the regatta was competitive. And so it did not feel good that our crew was not granted that same kind of flexibility when during the same day we saw that same type of flexibility be granted to another crew. And I think that the other piece of this that the IRA probably needs to think about or consider or talk to their referees about is there was a lot of hemming and hawing about, well, if you have another coxswain, then you're an exhibition entry. And because you're an exhibition entry, it's not safe for you to be in there racing with these other crews who are all competing for a national championship. Well, the IRA has made it clear that this event, the Varsity 4 event, is itself an exhibition event. The winner of the 4 is not called the national champion in the 4, and even just the entrance in the event, the wide variety of entrants. Again, we had D3s and Varsity 4 athletes from top tier D1s and mid-major D1s with their top 4 athletes like Marist, all in one event. The IRA has made explicit that this event is, as an event, an exhibition. Also, the points from the 4 do not count. There are no points that count from this event towards the overall team points trophy at the IRA. So that kind of begs the question of if the whole event is an exhibition, then why does any of this really matter on this deeper level? So, again, I'm frustrated for our athletes. I wanted to see them get to row in this final. It was a fantastic final with Cal and Penn and Harvard and Washington and Princeton, a great group of crews. And so we were super bummed not to be able to row. It was nobody's fault. Again, while we did not like the call, we appreciate that our perspective is different from what the referees is, and they were trying to make the best call that they could to make the event as fair as they can. So that was the conclusion of the IRA. Overall, again, a huge result, something to be very proud of. This was the fastest 4 by results that we have had since I've been at Marist, and is the first time that we have placed a 4 in the grand final since 2008. That year's crew came in second, and that was it was long enough ago that it was before this kind of more modern era of the IRA. And so the way the event is in its current format is significantly more competitive than it was back then. So again, huge shout out to this crew. They did a phenomenal job to make it to that level. And Tessa is doing fine now. She came back home, and huge shout out to her. She had an unbelievable season. For sure, neither this 4 nor our varsity 8 would have made it as far as they did during this season without her professionalism and her talent. And so thank you, Tessa, for all the hard work you do. And I just wanted to then kind of use that as a segue to talk about the season. I think that this result is a little bit of a mirror, or it reflects on a lot of the hard work and progress that was made here in Poughkeepsie over the course of this year. It was clear in the fall when we got back on campus that a lot of work had been done during the summer by some of these guys, and also that these guys had the bit between their teeth. They knew that they wanted to accomplish something more than the previous year, and they knew that they had the speed to be able to do it, and they were gonna make it happen. And I just loved that attitude. They carried that through this whole season. There was a real sense from the captains and the members of the team that they themselves were much more in the driver's seat than they have been in some of the more recent years. And I think that feeling paid off. I think that the athletes really drove themselves and their teammates to be faster throughout this season. Both the summer and the winter off seasons were implemented more competitively, much more work being done by more people. Selection was more competitive, and just, I think you saw in the results that the varsity stepped up to another level. The second varsity stepped up to another level. The 3V and the 4V were deep with talent. We didn't quite have enough for a 5V, but we had enough 5V guys who were committed that they were in here every day working hard. Even during the spring on the erg squad, they were in here, getting the work done and putting themselves in a position to compete. And so, I think that the result that this 4 had reflects that. And I also think you saw that during the regular season. We had some great wins during the regular season. We had some great close races. The win against MIT, that we hadn't beaten them since before COVID in our duel. We had a great win at the Occoquan Invitational against a whole bunch of really strong programs who are all right at our level. We had a great result at our Holy Cross duel. We lost to Holy Cross by, God, it was 15 to 20 seconds last year. And so to be 3 seconds behind them this year obviously was not the result we wanted, but that was a massive improvement over the previous year, and I think sets us up really well for the year to come. This boat, the Varsity 8 and the Varsity 4, are still extremely young. We had all sophomores and freshmen in there, only one junior and one senior in the Varsity 8, and then a senior coxswain. And so, I think that there's a lot to look forward to for the team, the performance, and where we're headed. Final quick shout out again to Josh and the other coaches for a great season. I want to shout out to our fellow teams and coaches. A lot of different events took place this year. Some more drama than I am accustomed to. In particular at the Dad Vale, and then again with our incident at the IRA. And, the longer I've been in this community, the more every year I'm blown away by how deeply all of these teams and coaches care for each other. Yes, there are rivalries here, but the number of teams and coaches who came up to us at the IRA in the midst of all of this and said, hey, you guys had a great season. We're so bummed not to see you race. It was really impressive, the amount of support that our athletes received from all different level crews and coaches. And so thank you to everyone in our community who, helps make this a special team and a special sport. I don't think you see that a lot in other sports, and so I really get the sense that all these programs, while yes there are rivalries, are ultimately rooting for each other and are excited when they see another team doing well, and so thank you to everyone who helps us out. Similarly, thank you to our parents who have been huge this year. We had excellent support at all of our events. Athletes were well fed and well cared for, well fueled. In particular, you saw the result of that at our big win at the Occoquan. We knew that was a high pressure day for fueling, and the parents really stepped up that day and had us, we had exactly what we needed there for fuel in between two closely packed races in a busy schedule. And then also our alumni who, thank you for continuing to be involved and engaged. Hardly a week went by this year that we didn't have an alum of one kind or another in the launch with us. We had a busy alumni day again. We had a super busy giving day again. So thank you again to our alumni for your generosity and your continued engagement with the team. It means a ton to the current athletes. It's something that everyone here really treasures about this team, and we hope to continue to see you guys be active in the seasons to come. We're jumping into the summer now. Coach Stratton and I will be busy getting out in the community doing some recruiting. And we look forward to announcing our excellent incoming freshman class of recruits. And a final shout out for our senior class of 2026. I think that when you look back on that crew, really what you'll see is a crew that created an inflection point, a turning point for this program, and helped take us from kind of a downward spiral after COVID to reversing that trend and then creating an upward spiral. which has resulted in this year's results, and I think will serve us well in the seasons to come. Those guys have been really exceptional teammates, and have really drilled down over the course of their time here into creating a culture that enhances the experience of the athletes here. And so thank you to the class of 2026 for making this place special. You'll be well remembered, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you back here for alumni days and other events in the future. I believe that's all I have for now. I'm sure I'm forgetting to thank somebody who has been a part of this season, but for me, this was probably top 2 or 3 seasons that I've had at Marist. Really special crew to work with from top to bottom. A lot of really fun personalities, and we're really looking forward to the years to come here and the excitement that's building down here at the boathouse. I remembered who I forgot: Darren McCormick, our facilities manager, who helps us take care of this old girl here behind us, and also looks after the Cornell Boathouse and all our facilities up at McCann. Darren's probably one of the biggest unsung heroes of this place, and his staff that help out with the maintenance of our athletics facilities. So thank you, Darren, for everything that you do as well. That's everything that I have. Thank you again to everyone, and congratulations again to the IRA crew of 2026 and the entire Marist crew who were part of the 2026 campaign. It was a phenomenal year, and we're looking forward to what comes next. Go Red Foxes.